Welcome to the First Mentor Podcast. Here, you will hear us talk about a variety of topics for the entire family that will hopefully spark a discussion, create a new curiosity, or simply teach you something new. The goal is to inspire you to learn life skills and soft skills not taught in school and prepare you to live an extraordinary life. Come on and spend some time with us on your commute to school or anytime you're free.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Vanessa Yang, and we are here today for another informative and exciting episode. And I want to thank you for joining us for episode 14 of the First Mentor Podcast. Today, we'll be talking about a healthy diet, and while mainly referencing the book How Not to Die by Michael Greger, MD. And trust me, you'll learn a lot today about how to structure your diet so that you can be as healthy as possible. Optimum health, full of vibrancy and energy, is really a major foundation of success in life. I mean, after all, what can you accomplish without a strong mind and body, right? Are you excited to learn more? We'll get started right away. Just make sure you don't forget to subscribe or add us to your favorite list. All of you have probably heard plenty about eating healthy and exercising if you want to achieve or maintain a healthy weight and be fit. But what does eating healthy really mean? I mean, to me, it used to mean eating more fruits and vegetables and cutting out or at least limiting fast food. And then later on, I learned sugar's bad for me, gluten or carbs are bad for me, and so on and so forth. Those are the standard things we've all learned, right? So about 2 years ago, when one of my family members was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, I started searching the internet for different treatment options. Autoimmune diseases are conditions where your own immune system attacks your own body. And there's many different types of autoimmune disease, such as celiac disease, lupus, multiple sclerosis, and many others. And during my research of our specific condition, I learned that many treatments are pretty invasive or would lead to potential long-term side effects. And I didn't want medicine to help fix one problem, but create another or many others as a result. So I looked for healthier, more natural treatment options. And then this opened a whole new world to me. I learned about how the right food can actually heal your body and the wrong ones can hurt it. It was so interesting as I learned more and more that I decided to study for it and obtain a certificate in holistic nutrition. And during my studies, I came across a book by Dr. Michael Greger called How Not to Die. It's an interesting title, isn't it? I know. Dr. Greger is the physician founder behind the very popular website nutritionfacts.org. It's a website where you can visit and see videos and also many other resources around the latest research regarding to nutrition. And this book provides evidence that reading the right types of food can prevent or even reverse some of the leading illnesses in America. And there's 2 parts of this book. So part 1 goes over the top 15 diseases such as heart, lung, and brain disease, in addition to different types of cancer, diabetes, and high blood pressure. And in part 2, Dr. Greger discusses his daily dozen, which are his recommendations of food we need to include on a daily basis. And I will cover the second part of this book. But I wanted to quickly summarize what I learned about becoming healthier from a holistic nutrition program. And in essence, basically, we just need to make a few lifestyle changes. And those include eating a whole foods plant-based diet, stress management through yoga and meditation, and moderate exercises on a regular basis. This podcast, as I mentioned earlier, focuses on the nutrition part. And our nutrition should focus really on consuming a whole food plant-based diet as much as possible to prevent many diseases that you might have now or even in the future. If you're still young and healthy, that's great. But don't take your health for granted. Now, if you're already diagnosed with a certain illness, changing your diet will help treat and potentially even reverse it. So what does eating a whole food plant-based diet really mean? You might have heard this term before. So simply put, it tells us 1, to eat food that are not processed and basically as close to how Mother Earth created it as possible. And 2, eating mostly plants instead of animal products. The recommendation is to keep animal-based food to 10% or less. And to clarify, unprocessed food means to focus eating food where none of the important nutrients have been removed and nothing like salt, sugar, or oil has been added. Now, you might say, isn't eating healthy actually more expensive? And it could be. I used to think that way too. For example, if you buy everything organic, our grocery bill is definitely higher than normal. But you can also save money if you purchase less meat because, as you probably know, meat tend to be more expensive than vegetables. The way I learned to think about it is this. I have to pay for it either now or later. Now, through spending more money on nutritious, unprocessed food, or later through higher medical bills. So the choice is really up to us. I know making the choice to completely change our existing diet is really, really challenging, especially if you love all kinds of food like me, or if your family members are not fully on board, which is also a case in my household. So the way I think of it is this. I will do as much as I can, but I still want to enjoy my life. So there's a balance there, right? Because if you're torturing yourself with really food that are seen as healthy, but you're not enjoying it, it's probably really challenging for you to maintain it long term, correct? So after all, for me, good and yummy tasting food makes me really happy. So it's important that I eat food that I enjoy. But some change is better than nothing, right? So as I slowly make changes in my life, I wanted to share with you what I'm doing more in this episode as well. Okay, so let's go over Dr. Greger's daily dozens. There's obviously dozens, so it's 12 of them. I'm going to mention them in order that he mentions in his book. 1, beans. 2, berries. 3, other fruits. 4, cruciferous vegetables. 5, greens. 6, other vegetables. 7, flax seeds. 8, nuts. 9, spices. 10, whole grains. 11, beverages. And 12, exercise. Now, I know I went over all 12. Now, who can name all the 12? Did you pay attention? Anyways, I'm just going to repeat them really quickly. Beans, berries, other fruits, cruciferous vegetables, greens, other vegetables, flax seeds, nuts, spices, whole grains, beverages, and exercise. Okay. Now, we're going to go over each of them a little bit more in detail, and let's start with beans. Dr. Greger recommends 3 servings of beans per day. And what are some of the examples? So beans include black beans, chickpeas, which are also known as garbanzo beans, edamame, peas, lentils, miso, split peas, and many others. And why beans, you might ask? Because beans are actually packed with nutrition such as protein, irons, and zinc, which is normally found in meat, as well as fiber, folate, potassium, which is normally found in vegetables. And in addition, beans are actually low in fat and sodium, which is known as salt, free of cholesterol, and most importantly, it's fairly inexpensive. So one of the most interesting information I learned about this is regarding soy. Now, you probably know soy from drinking soy milk or eating tofu. Would you consider soy milk and tofu processed or unprocessed food? They're definitely processed. But apparently soy is so healthy that even with half of the nutrition gone through processing, they're still considered very healthy. So if you eat tofu, just make sure you choose the ones with calcium. And an easy type of a whole food good version of soy is really enjoying edamame. It's a delicious snack that we have at home quite frequently. And if you go to Japanese restaurants, you probably can get edamame as an appetizer, either just plain or sometimes they add yummy, yummy flavors. I've had many different types. And sometimes when we were still in school, edamame would be a snack that I packed for my kids. Anyways, another interesting fact that I learned about soy is that soy is considered one of the highest GMO crops in the United States. And corn is another one. And what does GMO stands for? It stands for genetically modified organism, GMO. And it basically means that a plant or animal has its genetic material, so the DNA, changed. It's a little biology, right? A lesson that you learn in school. Now, there's still a debate on whether GMO products causes us harm in the long term. But my stand on this is I'd rather be safe than sorry if I can. So whenever possible, I try to choose organic soy products. And by law, that excludes GMOs. Before I move to the second Daily Dozen food, I want to suggest that it's really easy to buy canned beans. That's what I prefer. Just make sure you look for the options where no salt are added. Because for me, buying dry beans, it's great, but it just takes so much more time in cooking them. And I like to make things easy as possible. So the next item on the Daily Dozen are berries. It's recommended to eat 1 serving per day, either in fresh, frozen, or even in dried form. And besides the very popular berries we all know, such as strawberries, blueberries, or raspberries, have you ever tried or heard about other berries such as acai berries, cranberries, or even goji berries? I think it's always great to try different varieties of fruits, or foods in general, right? And one thing that I've learned is also the more colorful a food is, the healthier the food, because it contains a lot more antioxidants. And what do antioxidants do? They protect your cells. So when you buy berries, buy the reddest strawberries possible and the bluest blueberries. And berries is actually known as one of the healthiest fruits. They protect you against cancer, boost your immune system, and safeguard your liver and brain. And just to give you an idea of the antioxidant power berries have in comparison to other popular fruits, here's a few examples. So apples, for example, have 60 units and banana 40 units, while mangoes have 110 units. How many units do you think are in berries? In units of antioxidants, that's what I mean. So if they're healthier than other fruits, and again, apples have 60, banana 40, mango have 110. What do you think berries have? 150? 200 units? Well, strawberries have about 310 units per cup. Blueberries even more, 380. And blackberries, wait for it, an amazing 650 units per cup. Can you believe it? Blackberries have 650 units of antioxidants compared to just 60 for apples. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, have you ever heard about wild blueberries? Now, wild blueberries are smaller than blueberries, the ones that you probably all know, but they have 760 units of antioxidants. Isn't that crazy? So they might be a little bit harder to find, but I found them in frozen form, and they were organic too. Where? At Trader Joe's. So Trader Joe's have those frozen organic wild blueberries, and I add the wild organic blueberries to my smoothies. Or what I do is I make a mocktail with different fruit juices and sparkling water and add the frozen wild blueberries in there. It's actually pretty refreshing. And you know who else is a fan of wild blueberries? Have you ever heard about the medical medium, Anthony William? So he's the person who actually created the hype around celery juicing, but he also talks about other healthy foods. And this is what he says about wild blueberries. And I quote, "When you eat these berries, their innate intelligence reads your body, searches out potential disease, monitors your stress and toxicity levels, and figures out the best way to heal you. It is the only food that does that. One of the most effective heavy metal detoxing foods. While blueberries are also the most powerful brain food in existence, the most potent prebiotic there is, and a star at restoring the liver. Pretty powerful words, huh? And many years ago, I had gestational diabetes. And from that time, I remember I had to be put on a strict diet as well. And I remember learning, because I had to watch my sugar content, which was really challenging, that berries are on the lower end of sugar content in fruits. And Dr. Greger's book actually mentioned that natural sugars found in fruit are actually not causing our body to have a spike in our sugar level. Actually, on the contrary, it helps us offset the harmful effects of some of the other foods that we're eating. So it helps you if you balance berries with some other foods. Now, if you're wondering whether frozen berries are just as healthy as fresh ones, this book suggests that most nutrition in berries are actually kept when they're frozen. So generally, I always have several frozen bags of different berries in my freezer, and then I buy the fresh ones whenever they're in season. So I use frozen berries for smoothies, and I also make healthy sorbet or ice cream in the summertime with them. So it's an easy way to enjoy. Now let's talk about other fruits next. And each day they recommend 3 servings of other fruits. Although the best option to probably eat a piece of fruit is as a snack, right? Just fresh the way they are. But there are also other options, such as cooking, baking, or blending them into a smoothie, or even juicing. Now, why do some say that it's best to eat a fruit versus blending it into a smoothie? Well, putting all your fruits into a smoothie without adding extra sugar, okay? It is a convenient way to consume a variety of fruits. Eating a fruit slows down the sugar release and allows the body time to absorb all the nutrients. Because you probably eat a fruit slower than you would drink a fruit, the slower process of digestion will ultimately lead you to eating less. So basically, it's healthier, or I wouldn't say healthier, but better to eat a piece of fruit versus blending them into a smoothie because of the slower eating process. And as a result, you eat less and be fuller. Now, when it comes to comparison of making a smoothie versus juicing fruits, blending is healthier than juicing as it preserves more nutrition and you also get the benefit of the fiber. However, I also read in articles the benefits about juicing is that you're able to intake a higher concentration and it's easier to absorb the nutrients when you drink them. Now think about it, you probably drink 1 cup of fruit juice that took several pieces to prepare, right? But eating the same amount of fruits is quite challenging. Your body cannot eat as much as it can take from the juice. Now, whenever possible, I would buy organic fruits, especially if you eat the fruits including the skin, such as apples, because the majority of the nutrients and fiber are contained in the skin. And let's go over some of the specific fruits that the book How Not to Die mentions. One of Dr. Greger's favorite fall and winter snacks are dates. And I come to learn to eat dates and enjoy them myself as well several years ago. Especially now when I have a sweet craving, I just want something sweet. I tend to grab just a few pieces of dates. And I normally buy a large tub and I just leave them at home in my fridge. It's so convenient. I don't need to wash them or cut them, right? I mean, you can tell I try to be a very efficient person whenever possible. I always think about what's the easiest way to do certain things. Now, Dr. Greger actually cautions us about store-bought dried fruits. I mean, dry fruits are fruits too, but the problem with them is they tend to have lots of sugar added. And he's right. When I look at the ingredients list when I go shopping, many times when I buy dried fruits, I look at it and it always says sugar added, right? So just be very careful with that. The other recommendation Dr. Greger has about buying dried fruits is that they should be unsulfured. So, okay, let's go to the next one. Number 4 of the daily dozen are cruciferous vegetables, such as broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, bok choy, arugula, and many others. And here 1 serving per day is recommended. Now, broccoli appears to be one of the favorite vegetables in this book, as it was mentioned several times. And there's a reason for it, because there's so many positive side effects, which includes preventing DNA damage, boosting liver detox enzymes, protecting our brain and eyesight, and reducing nasal allergy inflammation. So broccoli apparently does many, many wonders. And lucky for me, my kids love broccoli. What we do is normally we stir fry broccoli, or we simply just steam it or boil it enough to be soft, but still have a slight crunch. So we just eat them plain, which is always the best way, right? Now, the other vegetable that gets eaten a lot within our family are cauliflowers. And as you might be aware, this specific vegetable has gained immense popularity in the recent years. I mean, even within our own household, we sometimes replace rice with riced cauliflower, or we enjoy cauliflower in pizza dough. There's just so many options right now. And if you haven't checked it out or paid attention to it, take a look at it, because instead of eating dough, which is more carbs, you actually eat a vegetable in the form of a cauliflower. So it's pretty neat. Next, we have greens on our list with 2 servings per day recommendations. Now, these greens include spinach, Swiss chard, collard greens, and kale. And I'm so glad to read that spinach is considered one of the healthiest foods on this planet. They apparently offer the most nutrition per calorie. What we do in our household, we generally always have a tub of organic baby spinach at home. And we use those, once again, for smoothies. You can tell we love smoothies. But then we also use the spinach for stir fry or add them to some of our most favorite breakfast dishes, right? But spinach, especially organic baby spinach, is something we always have at home. They're pre-washed and you just grab them. So it's very easy. Again, you see? Easy and efficiency, right? That's what I look for. Number 6 are other vegetables, where 2 servings each day are recommended. And what is included here? Asparagus, carrots, bell peppers, corn, mushrooms, pumpkin, squash, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, zucchini, and others. I would suggest to try to eat a variety of them, since the different vegetables help prevent or cure different types of diseases. Now, I know it's easier said than done, since not a lot of people like vegetables, right? I mean, luckily my kids like certain ones, but they are not too adventurous when it comes to vegetable. One of my favorites from the list that I mentioned earlier within the other vegetable categories are mushrooms. And there's so many types of them. Now, I learned from the book that mushrooms include a certain amino acid that actually protect our cells. So that sounds pretty good to me, right? And what we do with mushrooms is we stir fry them, or I also love to make mushroom soups. And one of my kids' favorite mushroom dishes is actually portobello mushroom fries. Have you tried those before? They're so delicious. And one quick healthy snack tip that I have for you is to cut up cucumbers and carrots and dip them in hummus as a healthy snack. This way, we avoid the fried or baked chips that we eat with hummus. I also try to roast sweet potatoes, which is another great and yummy snack. And by the way, talking about sweet potatoes, have you ever tried purple sweet potatoes before? They're really yummy. One time we added them in our barbecue smoker as we were smoking other meats, and they came out amazing as a side dish. And they hold pretty well as a snack as well later. You can eat them warm or cold. I try to like things when they're just fresh out of the oven or smoker in this case. The other thing I try to do to increase our vegetable consumption is to sneak them into smoothies. So you can hide them with other fruits or bake them into your cakes or brownies. There's so many amazing recipes out there. You can really search the internet and you'll be surprised what you can find. Now, I've learned that it's commonly suggested to purchase organic vegetables from your local farmer's market, right? Farmers market generally have seasonal products, and because they're local, you get fresher, more nutritious food. I know the price tag to purchasing organic foods all the time is really hefty. So I'm trying to be selective as far as when it comes to purchasing organic items and food, right? And to eliminate or at least significantly reduce pesticides from our vegetables, one thing you can do if you don't buy organic is to wash your vegetables in salt water. My mother-in-law actually has been doing this for many years. I've learned and confirmed it in this book that it's actually really helpful to wash your vegetables in salt water. And they recommend 10% salt and 90% water. Now let's talk about flax seeds next. Have you heard about flax seeds or used them? I was actually surprised that this ingredient earned its own mention as one of the daily dozen. And they recommend 1 tablespoon per day. Now, what makes flax seeds so special? Flax seeds are high in antioxidant, and they have a really good amount of omega-3 fatty acids. And they should be consumed in ground form for your body to easier absorb the nutrients. What I generally do is add flax seeds to my yogurt, smoothies, or oatmeals. Now, nuts and seeds are number 8 on the list. Some of my favorites within this category are almonds, pistachios, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, and many others. And they recommend 1 serving per day, which is equal to 1/4 of a cup, or 2 tablespoons if you prefer to eat nut butter. Now, just to make sure you don't overindulge in nuts, as they tend to have high fat contents, right? But they're good fat, but just still be very careful. This book mentions that eating nuts on a regular basis can actually increase your lifespan. And which nut takes the lead in being the healthiest? Do you know? Walnut. It's considered one of the healthiest nuts. And in my research of healthier and more nutritious food, I came across a person named Darren Olin. He traveled around the world with Zac Efron in the popular Netflix show Down to Earth with Zac Efron. And it's really, really interesting. And one of the things I learned from Darren as I started following him more on other platforms is I learned about a different types of nut that I've never heard before. And these are Barukas nuts, which is considered, according to him, one of the healthiest nuts out there. We actually ordered some and tried them, and they taste great, but they're definitely a little bit more expensive than other nuts that we bought. Okay, let's go on next. Herbs and spices, which are loaded with antioxidants. And herbs and spices include turmeric, basil, cinnamon, cumin, thyme, rosemary, oregano, and many, many others. And the recommendation is to consume 1/4 of a teaspoon of turmeric and, in addition, other salt-free spices daily. And once again, look at all the colors, as colors represent what? Antioxidants. That's correct. You've probably heard me mention this word many, many times. And have you noticed one thing, what I said about herbs and spices? Turmeric is called out separately. And then he said other spices. Now, what is turmeric? Turmeric is a root that looks very similar to ginger, probably a little bit smaller, and you're probably more familiar with ginger. But turmeric has been becoming really, really popular in the recent years, mainly due to one of the nutrients it contains called curcumin. And curcumin plays a really important role in preventing and treating a large variety of diseases, including lung and brain diseases, a variety of cancer, along with some inflammatory conditions. So what I do nowadays is, before bedtime, I drink one of those superfood power mixes called Golden Mellow. It's from a company called Your Super. And I can talk about Your Super products probably in another episode. But what I do is I drink that with warm water just right before bedtime, because it has, like I said earlier, anti-inflammatory support, and it also helps me sleep better. Now, Your Super is a very fast-growing company in Los Angeles, and what they do is they create organic superfood blends that I've been adding to my diet on a regular basis. And one of the things that I like about this Golden Mellow mix, besides turmeric, it includes other ingredients such as ginger and pepper. And Dr. Greger even states in his book that including just a tiny bit of black pepper boosts the curcumin levels in our blood. And the other way to consume that is eating curry in our diet. I don't know, do you like curry? I do. I love different types of curry, whether it's an Indian food, Japanese curry, Chinese, or even Vietnamese. I think curries are delicious with rice. Anyways, another way we consume spices at our home is obviously through cooking. What I do, for example, I sneak in various blends of dried herbs into our salads, especially salad dressings when I make them at home, soups that I make, stir-fried food, and even baked vegetables. And remember how I mentioned the portobello mushroom fries earlier? When I make them, I add different spices and that are salt-free, obviously. And what I do is I mix them in the mixture when I coat the portobello mushrooms, right? So it's in the breadcrumbs, and I just add oregano or sometimes thyme. Depends on what we have at home. A new way that I also try to incorporate spices and herbs is through drinking tea. And one thing I learned from my holistic nutrition studies, we actually had a whole book about herbs and spices, is I tried part of my homework to make fresh peppermint tea with fresh rosemary that we happen to have in the garden. It was actually really delicious. You should try that. Okay, next is whole grains and 3 serving recommendations daily. Some examples of whole grains include oats, brown rice, quinoa, barley, and buckwheat. Now, whole grains like whole wheat or brown rice are better than refined grains, such as white flour or white rice. Whole grains contain better sources of fiber and important nutrients because they haven't been stripped of them, like the counterparts of refined grains. So when purchasing whole grains, also let the colors guide your decision. For example, choose red quinoa over white quinoa and yellow corn over white corn. You probably get that. Because brighter color means what? Higher antioxidants, exactly. And it also helps with higher anti-allergy activity and has stronger anti-cancer fighting effects. So all very helpful, right? Another guide provided in this book is the 5-to-1 rule. So what does that mean? I thought that was quite interesting. So what you do is that you read the nutrition facts on the label on the package, right? And look at the ratio of grams of carbohydrates in comparison to the grams of dietary fiber, which should be 5 or less. And my best way of learning is always through examples, so I'm going to give you an example here. So let's say a whole wheat bread has 30 grams of carbs and 3 grams of fiber, and it doesn't pass the 5-to-1 rule test. Why not? So 30 grams of carbs divided by 3 is 10. So the ratio is 10, right? And we said earlier what? 5 or less. So obviously 10 is more than 5, so we should pass on it. Now, the example the book mentioned is Ezekiel bread of 15 grams carbs and 3 grams of fiber. 15 in proportion to 3 is 5. And remember the rule is 5 or less, so it passes the test. When you use this rule, you avoid falling prey to the marketing terms. As you know, marketers come up with all sorts of terms to make you buy things, right? Those terms could be 100% wheat or 7 grain or many others that just sound really good, but they might not be as good for you. So remember, use the what rule? 5-to-1, correct. Now, one of my favorite breakfasts are oatmeals. And oatmeals contain anti-inflammatory compounds, which help with many skin issues. So what I do is actually I purchase steel-cut oats because they're considered whole foods. The normal oatmeal is quicker to cook, but in this case, I actually prefer the healthier part of it. And my favorite way of eating it, like I said, takes a lot of time to cook, but I cook it in batches, meaning I just cook more than once so I can just reheat it easier the next time I eat it. So what I do is I either make overnight oats, which is easy, or I cook steel-cut oats while adding chia seeds or flax seeds towards the end of my cooking process. And then I just simply add some dried fruits or nuts for a really delicious and healthy breakfast. And now let's talk about beverages next. The book recommends 5 servings of 12-ounce glasses per day for different drinks, including a variety of teas, whether it's chai, green, black, hibiscus, jasmine, peppermint, matcha, but as well as water, coffee, and hot chocolate. Those are the beverages it includes. Now, which one do you think is the healthiest drink? I think that's a no-brainer, right? Water is obviously number 1. So I used to learn that the recommendation was about 8 cups per day. But as I started reading more and looking into this, I actually learned another guideline, which is drinking half of your body weight in ounces of water. So for example, if you weigh 140 pounds, what's half of that? 70. So then if you're 140 pounds, the recommendation is at least 70 ounces daily, right? Because I cannot tell my younger son to drink 8 cups or 64 ounces and I drink the same amount. It doesn't make sense. So we now use the half body weight in ounces guidance. I would probably cover the topic of water more in depth in another episode because I've learned some really interesting information about that. So I will share them with you later. The next healthiest drinks are tea and coffee, but only without the creamer and sugar because although they taste yummy and they make it more enjoyable, they're not so good for you, right? So coffee has to be consumed with some limits. And not only because it's caffeine content, right? Certain people who have health conditions such as acid reflux or glaucoma should stay away from coffee. That's what the book says. So I would overall recommend to enjoy coffee once in a while, but also for me, I prefer tea, although I am a coffee drinker as well. So then when it comes to tea, green tea is especially good for you. You probably read that many times. And within green tea, there's many, many different varieties. And the one I wanted to call out is matcha. And matcha is a powdered green tea version, which is better for you because you're drinking the leaves itself. Not just tea made out of the leaves, but the leaves is grounded and powdered, so you're including that. And white and green tea are generally less processed than black tea, so therefore they're better for you. But again, also watch out for the caffeine content. And also consider organic versions because I've heard that many tea types, depends on where they're being produced, are actually also including high levels of pesticides, just to be very careful. And last but certainly not least, we've come to the last item of the Daily Dozen, which is exercise. Dr. Greger suggests either 40 minutes of vigorous or 90 minutes of moderate intensity activity on a daily basis. Now, I'm not so sure how many people can actually make that part of their daily lifestyle. So I know it's really hard to include that much time for you to exercise. So what I do is I do what I can, right? That's always my goal in life. And I'd rather do something that makes sense that I can incorporate on a regular basis or not do at all. So my goal personally is to do minimum 30 minutes of exercise per day, in addition to exceeding over 10,000 steps. I have my little iWatch, and I'm so glad that I'm using it because it tracks me. It really keeps me in check. But what I do in my daily exercise, I really try to take turns between cardio, weight exercise, walking, stretching, and include even hula hoop. So it helps to have a variety, and it also helps different levels of exhaustion. That way I can keep it and make sure I exercise on a daily basis. And what's also important, what I've learned, is just to make sure you stand up regularly because sitting too much could actually lead to significant health problems. So make sure you just move your body. I think that's just an important thing. Think about different ways. If you're rather a person that enjoys making exercise as a social event, whether you go biking with friends or play tennis or what have you, do that. Do whatever makes sense and whatever is easiest for you and you enjoyable. I think that's the easiest way to do things, and that way you can also implement that. Well, we certainly learned a lot today. So just wanted to give you a very, very quick summary as we're wrapping up this episode. The book, again, that I based a lot of the information from today's episode is called How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. Also, I wanted to summarize the daily dozens that he mentioned in his book. Beans, berries, other fruits, cruciferous vegetables, greens, other vegetables, flax seeds, nuts, spices, whole grains, beverages, and exercise. Now, for further information, you could either go visit his website, nutritionfacts.org, or download the app. Alternatively, you could also buy his New York Times bestseller book, How Not to Die, which I obviously mentioned several times in this podcast. And I will add a link in the description of this podcast, as well as other references that I mentioned throughout this episode. Hope you enjoyed this episode and learned a lot. of ideas of how to incorporate healthy foods into your diet. And I hope to speak to you next time. And make sure don't forget to subscribe or add us to your favorite list. Have an amazing day. Bye.